Okay, in this video I'm going to be showing you end of day and beginning of day maintenance, as well as the conditions that our 1380i DTF printer should be in at all times. So let's start off with the conditions that it should be in. So as for your heat, it should be at 22 plus degrees Celsius, and your humidity should be at 40% plus at all times, especially when printing. Do not print if it's anywhere under those conditions. And your nozzle check at your beginning of day, before you start printing, always has to be good. So there can't be a lot of error in it, and I will show you that. Okay, so without further ado, let's get on to our beginning of day maintenance, and then we'll move on to our end of day maintenance. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do in the morning is you're going to want to start off by going around and making sure that all your ink levels are proper. You have enough ink to print, as well as your white. Make sure there's a good level of white in there. And then I just make sure as well that the film's good. We're all lined up. There's nothing impeding my printing. As well as I go to the back just to make sure that my roller is going. And then you come over to your printer or your PC, you go to settings, just make sure your margins are set to either 0 or 15, nowhere over really 15 or 20. And then you go over to, well, that's for when you print, we do our nozzle check. But we're gonna start off with a cleaning. Gonna go both heads, normal. And your printer head starts cleaning. So let it go through the cleaning process. Okay, so once your device is done cleaning in the morning, you come over, make sure your margins are set in between 0 and 20, and then you're gonna do a nozzle check. Now, if your nozzle check has any air in it, or it doesn't come back the greatest, you just got to give it another cleaning. We'll take a look at how this one looks. Okay, so this looks fairly good. There's a few breaks in my white. So the color looks good for printing. I'd like to get that cleaned up a little bit more before I start printing. So I'm going to do another cleaning, and we'll see how that does. You just come over, go to both your heads again, and you can just give it a weak cleaning at this point. It doesn't need a normal cleaning. There's not a lot of breaks, so just give it a weak cleaning, and that should clean that up. If it doesn't, and you continually have breaks in the same spot, and there's lots of them, just give us a call, and we'll go through some things with you to try to get that cleaned up. Okay, we've done our second cleaning to try and just clear up those last little bubbles there, some air bubbles, which is normal. I'll just do an extra cleaning. That's DTF printing. We'll do another check. Just make sure those are cleared up. And you might have to do a weak cleaning or another normal cleaning. It's not unusual to do 3 or 4 cleanings in the morning sometimes. Just want to make sure our nozzle checks are always good before we start printing. Okay. So now this one looks great. With very little breaks, it's good for printing. We can print like this. Okay, we've seen from the last one that those breaks all cleared up in this one. So it looks good. We've done our cleaning, our nozzle check. So now we are ready to print. So we are good to go for printing, and that is your morning routine for getting started on printing. Okay, so this is our end of day maintenance. You can either do it with the control panel on the printer or on your PC. If for some reason it got disconnected and it's not working. Sometimes that happens. If it disconnects, you may have to reconnect your PC and do a reset just to kind of re-get it to go back on. But for the most part, if you don't shut your stuff off and keep it connected at all times, they always stay married up. So let's start off with the PC. What you'll do is you'll come over, and so now you're idle, you're all done printing for the day. We're gonna hit left, and we're gonna bring your printer head over to the working station here for cleaning your heads, okay? So you can either push left on here to get it to go over, or this is like a return to base, so it puts it back to base. So I'll hit that, it'll put my head back to base, okay, back to the capping station. Now the other way you can do it is with your control panel, and you can come up here and just hit your left button, and it will move it to the left. So you can bring it over to your cleaning station, your head cleaning station at any time. That way or through PC. So that's both ways to do it. Okay, so at this point, you're gonna wanna block your sensor with something. So there's your heads, and that's the sensor there that you're gonna block. So you're gonna grab a piece of tin foil or a piece of paper, something that will block it, just fold it up, and then that's your sensor there, just above the capping station alongside that gray thing, your gray bar there that holds your head. So just put something in between it like that. So it's just going in between it to sort of block the sensor. Oops, let's just get that on there. So just make sure that it's sitting on there and that it won't fall off, and that way it's blocking the sensor to sort of trick your head. And what we're gonna do here is, we're gonna come over, we're gonna do it both ways again. I'm just gonna show you both ways, on the PC and on the control panel as well. So starting with the PC, you're gonna be in your settings, then you're gonna go over to load ink. After your sensor is blocked, load ink. Now what that's doing is it's just continually sucking through the capping station so we can clean out the sponge that's inside there and clean and flush out your capping station of any ink. So at this point, so let me show you the way to do it on the controls on your printer, and then we'll get to what you have to do. So that's the one way to do it, and just start that process, or you can do it from your controls as well on your printer. You come over to it, you hit function, then you go down, press down button until you get to head maintenance, hit enter, go down to fill ink, enter, 2 heads, just hit enter again, and now it will commence filling. And now we've tricked it. So now what you do at this point is you grab a water bottle or a squirt bottle, should have a good nozzle at the end, and just to give a little bit of pressure when you're squeezing it in there. I use an old ink bottle. So if you have an old ink bottle, you can rinse it out and reuse it, or any kind of squirt bottle from the dollar store or wherever. So once you get your ink bottle or your squirt bottle, then you just put regular water into it, and then you can come down, and it's sucking right now. So as I put in the water, it's cleaning out and sucking down and draining all into my waste, all of the ink that's sitting in there, and I'm cleaning out the sponge that's inside the capping station, so that when we wet cap at the end of the day, the last thing is to wet cap. This isn't sitting in residue of ink. There's no residue in here. So I kind of give a little in there, go over to the color, squirt a little in there. Don't squirt too hard. You don't want to get it outside of it because there's a sensor down there. Now it stops in between after 60 seconds. So what I like to do is fill it with a little bit, see if there's any residue left, and if there's not, I know it's cleaned out. So that looked fairly clean to me. There was no white residue or colored residue in there. I'm just going to squirt a little bit more water in there. Okay, and then once we get that cleared out, you can either come over to here and there'll be a screen that says stop loading ink. So just hit stop, or you can come onto your controls, hit data clear, and then hit function, and it will bring you back to the beginning, your status there. Okay, your beginning status. So now that we flushed out the capping station, we're going to clean around here. Now I got to get a different angle, but we're going to clean the capping station now. Okay guys, so from this point I grabbed some distilled water. I put it into a cup, small cup, okay? Distilled water with some foam tips. And then you're going to take your tip, you're going to squeeze it off, and you're going to wipe the blades. The reason I squeeze the water out, I don't squeeze it all out, but I squeeze most of the water out just to be able to absorb some of the ink and stuff as I go along. But I am squeezing some of the water out of this. So then we just go along our capping station now. We just make sure along there is clean, get rid of all the ink that's there. Any dried ink that's there, get rid of it. Again, around the other capping station. This is just right now with distilled water, and I'm rinsing out the foam tip. I'm just kind of squeezing it out, the water out a little bit every time I put it in. Just rinse in between. Make sure that all of the ink residue and everything, and there's no dry ink around the station. Especially around the rubber here. This is where your head sits on, and you don't want anything in there or inside. If there's any little pieces of ink or dried ink, just kind of pick them out of there as best you can. Okay, so now our capping station, our wiper blade here is basically wiped off. And now what we need to do is we need to moisturize this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another foam tip. A nice clean one, dry. And then you're going to add moisturizer and squeeze it into the foam tip. Once you have moisturizer in your tip, then you're going to want to moisturize your wiper blade. Make sure it's nice and moist. And then you're going to want to moisturize around the rubber, around where your head sits. Just make sure there's moisturizer and it's nice and moisturized around there. Again, with no ink residue being left behind. Okay? So I just like to make sure it's nice and clean. There's nothing left there. Okay. So now that the capping station is moisturized, we're going to get it ready for wet capping. And in that case, we take our moisturizer squeeze bottle and we fill up each capping station, not overflowing, just enough to sort of fill the honeycomb at the bottom, and then you stop. Just let it coat on the entire bottom. Don't go overflowing it. Just keep going until you see the honeycomb fill up. The sponge fills up in there with moisturizer, keeping it moisturized. And then this will keep our heads moisturized. So from this point, we're ready to wet cap, but we have to clean our head first. So let's move over to cleaning the head, and then we'll get back to what we have to do after that for wet capping. Okay, so here's your two printer heads. What you're going to do is start off by taking a new foam tip and soaking it in moisturizer, and then we're going to start off by cleaning the sides in the little crevices here of each printer head. So you kind of get into the sides here, into here, then I sort of spin it and I'll do the color. In here. And in here. you sort of rinse it out and then put some more moisturizer in it. And then you sort of do the sides as well. Just going to move the camera out of the way a little bit. So you get into the sides. So you get this side here and there. Make sure you get inside this side. It's a little bit dirty for the white. All I do is just rinse it again, a little bit more moisturizer if there's a lot of ink in there. I like to keep the foam tip as clean as possible when around the heads. And then again, I'll come along this side, clean this side, and then I'll clean this side. And now we've cleaned around our heads, and now what we want to do is clean the whole silver part there, completely around, so the whole base of your head there, we're going to clean. So if you don't have clean room, we have clean room wipes that we use. You can get those off our website. If you don't have clean room wipes, you can use a foam tip. Again, moisturize it, rinse it out, a little bit of moisturizer, and then you kind of just keep going along the entire thing beside them. Go along all the way. And you're going to want to make sure that these little bumpers here, these collect a lot of ink on these here. So you're going to want to give a little bit of pressure, some good pressure in there, and really clean those off. Again, on the other side, just press and then push along to get all that ink off. And on the other side as well, so get both sides. And press and along. I'm going to clip it, press and along. Okay, and then I'll rinse it off of any residue that's on there or any ink. I'll just keep rinsing off the ink as I go along. Refill the foam tip with moisturizer. Rinse it a bit, and then continue on and continue wiping the entirety of this silver thing, all the way from over here. Get under there, get all the ink there. Get all the ink on the side of these here. These collect ink in the side here. And of course you're going to want to get along in between your heads as well. All in between here. All in there. Collects ink as well. And then of course the other side. So make sure all that's clean. Now if you have, that's with a foam tip. If you have a clean room wipe, I'm going to grab one of those now. You moisturize it completely. Make sure it's completely moisturized. I like to fold it into 4, like that. I'll fold it into 4. And then I'll just soak it with moisturizer and rinse it out. So that the entire thing is full of moisturizer. There's no dry spots and it's all rinsed out nice. And then what you do is all you're doing here is coming along the one side and you give it a wipe across. We'll sort of try to get a different angle there. See, all you're doing is just making sure you're not touching the head and wipe straight across. And then you can get the front, go all through the front. And then wipe the sides as well. Get right in there. You can give your little bumpers here, these side things, a good scrubbing. Give it a nice rub. It's a little bit easier to clean under here with the clean room wipe, but both ways are effective. You can do it both ways. So again, in between your heads, around the back of your head, and around the front of your head. So just make sure that there's no ink residue left anywhere on there. Clean it off nice. Get right in between there. A lot of ink likes to collect right in here. So get inside there nice. Okay. And now once we have our head clean, from this point, we're going to wet cap. Okay, so we finished cleaning our head. We finished cleaning the capping station and preparing it for wet capping. All we have left to do is remove the blocker from the sensor. So let's remove that now. We'll get rid of that. I like to keep it just alongside for the next time I have to do it. And then, so now our sensor is unblocked. We're ready for wet capping. Head's clean. You can either come over to your PC and hit X reset, or you can go on your controls and just hit base point. Base point. It'll put your capping station down. It'll return your head home, and you are wet capped for the evening, putting her to bed. And now your printer is wet capped, and that is the end of day process for the 1380i DTF printer.